Hello, my name is Brant Hunt, and my channel is Discerning What Is True. In a few minutes, we'll have Phil Langdon live here. That is hopefully from England, from London. That is, and we're going to talk to him about some issues. But basically, I hope to talk to him about his new book called "Heaven Is a Cloud." So we're just waiting for him, and just bear with us as we have him here in a few moments. Okay. Usually, Phil has a what I call a cat that comes visits his place there. He told me, I think it was Friday, we were talking. He told me that the cat, I think, has 3 or 4 times to visits to his house, his place to get fed. So I don't know if the cat is just a roaming cat that just simply looks for food everywhere it can find it, or that cat has been turned down everywhere but at Phil's particular place. So, but anyway, it's kind of funny. So usually, sometimes he's been entertaining the cat or feeding the cat at this time. I guess he's getting his lunch or mid-afternoon snack or whatever you call it here. So I would encourage people also to look into. Um, I did a video last night um, that really was something I found on the internet, and I just happened to read it. And so I was just sharing that last night from that is from Scholler, Renee Scholler. I'm not a big person on the French language, de Libis, I guess is how you pronounce it. I don't know how to pronounce it, but anyway, um, it's. I did a video last night, and it was a very informing video. Me reading it, the particular book online. So if you have any interest in that, he was a philosopher. Was in it had an influence on had it, someone influenced him was Gerald Massey, Massey. So uh, hello, Layla. How are you doing? It's just one of us so far here. Hopefully, Phil will be here around in a little bit. Hello, Phil.
Oh, hi, Brant. Hi. Can you hear me?
I can hear you well.
Okay, cool.
I we already live, so
Right. Okay. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I've. Oh, you're already 3 minutes in. Okay.
that's
Sorry.
okay. I just talking as usual. So
Okay.
just type of thing. But
Yeah.
were you feeding the cat as usual?
Well, funnily enough, he's been roaming around and he's bitten me on the nose already. So,
He's bit you on the nose.
yeah, yeah, it's all right. It's 'cause I got in his way. He tried to jump on the wall outside. I popped out to get some coffee from the shop, and he tried to jump on the wall, and I got in the way as I went out. See, and
Oh,
he slammed into me. He fell down some steps, and I petted him to see if he was all right. And
right.
he jumped back on the wall, and I was sort of stroking him, and he reaches with his nose, you see, and I put my face to him, and this time he bit me.
Oh, it bit you. Okay. Okay.
Not
Where's
bad.
the food? Where's the food, Phil? Where's the food?
It was an endearing sort of bite, it was a pleasant
Oh,
bite. So
okay.
yeah.
Okay. Did you
Anyway,
have a good weekend?
what day is it today? Monday. A busy weekend. I was at work all weekend, so busy.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. How about you?
Uh, yeah, pretty busy last night. I finished up the book. which was the book to deal with numbers, a study of numbers here by
Right.
and uh, it's a little dry for me. It's a little bit what I would call deals with math and physics, so to speak. If it's
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
has some
Mechanism. Yeah. It's akin to, in a way, some of it is akin to the Rudy Rucker book, The Fourth Dimension, How to Get There.
Right.
A little bit, because the number theory links to dimensional analysis. That they all link together, these subjects.
Correct.
So
Correct.
you can float around them. You can go from one to the other, from sacred geometry to this to that.
Right.
Yeah.
So like I was saying last night, I was reading a book online, which was by Alvin Boyd Kuhn, and really good. I just happened to find it, looking for something, and under his name, and it was there. Yeah. And so I just said, "Oh, okay, let's just read this online and see what it's all about."
Yeah.
And so it was over. I read continuously for an hour and 40 minutes.
Yes, I've seen it. Yeah, I haven't watched it, but I've seen that you've done that.
Yeah, it went through so quickly in some ways. Although the last part was like, man, I need a drink of water here. I'm about to dry up. I mean, when you start talking, it's no problem. But the point is, if you continue talking and talking, eventually you're like, okay, I need to get something down my throat, or else I'm going to not be able to speak. So,
yeah.
But anyway, Phil, just introduce yourself again as usual about who you are and what you're about and what has occurred in your life.
Hi, I'm Phil Langdon. I'm from London. I'm 53. I've had spiritual ascension at the age of 44, so it's been 9 years at the moment. And spiritual ascension involves two events. One's meeting God, the other one is ascending to what we call our root, which is written about in especially the Bible, but most religious texts talk about this event. It's available to anyone, by the way, so there's nothing special about having it. That's just a thing that I think people get wrong. They think they can't have it or they can't reach it. That's completely untrue. And part of my doing it was to prove that was untrue, that it is actually doable by anybody. And it's true, it is doable by anybody. So there.
So you don't have to do any special jumps or, what I'm saying simply is you have to have the desire to pursue it, yes, but it is available to anyone who wants to pursue it.
Yeah.
Meaning that you don't quit on yourself. You continue to fight and not fight, but basically pursue it.
That's right. You honestly, if you want to do it securely and surely, you do what they did in the ancient past, and you do the equivalent of building a pyramid inside your own head. And that simply means you gather information about your surroundings, the world around you, because it has something to do with you. So when you learn about it, you eventually learn about yourself in the process.
Right.
And in so doing, you do a complete round of learning. So you learn about the outside world first and all of its tricks and wonders. And you learn about your own self as well, because they're almost reflections. They're kind of reflections of each other. And you represent the outside world in its entirety as the most complex form that's been created by this world.
Right.
So by studying the world around you, you're studying your roots and your basis, the basis of your physical existence. See, and you learn about your mentality and your psyche and how to control it, because your body is like a beast, and you realize that you're not the body. This is a dilemma when you're in youth. You wonder whether when people die, that's it. And, what a horrible prospect, because what's the point of anything if that's the case? That this is such a fundamental issue that Freud focused on it. Sex and death are the two issues of Freud, the main ones that Woody Allen, for instance, the director, goes on and on about. Right. I don't know whether you're familiar. I'm a fan of Woody Allen because he's very intellectual and he's very amusing as well. I find him very funny. But I've studied Freud by watching Woody Allen, you see, because I realized he's so into him. What's all this about years ago?
I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that at all about him.
Yeah,
I was never crazy about Woody Allen. I just
right. I can understand. I can totally understand. I don't like all of his films. But the thing about Freud is that he deals with the most fundamental issues that we face.
Right.
Yeah, they really are the most powerful fundamental issues. So he deals with that, and I'm really happy that somebody did that. You know, I'm glad it's not 1705 or something where we're starting to discover alchemy and how, you know, what relation it has to the human psyche without fully grasping. And now we have psychology. I mean, what a fantastic thing!
Correct.
That's fantastic. You know, we have a lot of potential at our disposal in this day and age that people never had before.
Correct.
I thought it'd be a good idea to use it for the most advantageous thing there is. And as you go forward and learn about things, you realize there is a thing to reach. There is something to do, because you can do things. Therefore, there's a perfect thing to do just by extrapolation, by logic.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Layla says hello to you.
Oh, hello, Layla. Hello. Nice to you're there. Thank you.
She's got something here. She says, I guess it's pirate. Pyramid. She's got here spelled it Pyrea mid MID. So it's Pyrea then mid. So there's three different words here: fire in the middle, or
Yes.
passionate pursuit.
Yeah, fire in the middle. It means pyramid means fire in the middle.
That's
what it actually means. Yeah, and funnily enough, that central chamber in the Great Pyramid is where fire occurs in a way, in some strange sort of way. Yeah, okay. Electrical.
Learning something every day. Good. I was going to ask you something else and I forgot. I had a few little questions before we get into the book because they were my questions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We kind of hinted around those questions last Friday, but I don't think we ever hinted, we never got to them. So I was just going to ask simply as something that before we reincarnate or incarnate here first, do we choose our parents, that is, or our brothers and sisters? And let's see what I wrote down here. Or is it arranged by the powers to be? And what about the idea of boy or girl? Do we choose particular sex? In other words, before we enter this incarnation, do we choose to be a boy or do we choose to be a girl, so to speak? So these are all dealing with what I would call, there's some people say, I hear them many times, says, well, I chose to be a girl to such and such to enter this particular realm. And others will say, well, I chose to be a boy. And I'm like, I don't remember choosing any of it. So I'm just trying to want to clarify that in some ways. Because I'd rather be, actually, as far as I know, if I reincarnate again, I would still rather be a boy. I think it's much harder for a woman in a lot of ways in this world compared to being a boy, I guess is what I'm saying. So.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that, actually. Yeah. To be honest, the practical nature of life, I tend to agree with that. I have to say that when we think about these things from our perspective in life, and that we haven't passed over, we don't have that perspective. That's a very big deal. Having a completely different perspective, because most people don't know for sure if they're going to survive death to start with. So in their mind, they're not even thinking about, well, what's beyond it? What do I do about that? What can you think about in those terms? That you have nothing to relate it to. All we can relate to in terms of what we call death, because there's no such thing in actual fact, is when we see people that stop working physically. They just drop like a rag doll. And you think, well, what happened to the person? These are fundamental questions, And when we go beyond our physical life, we have a different perspective. There is a change in your perspective. It's still you. Right. But you're going to expand your perspective and realize, oh, I see, hang on, my existence is eternal in the first place. Correct. So the question is, well, that's a completely different kettle of fish. You can now perceive your existence in a completely different light. So with that, you are, I mean, spirituality, the spiritual world, as it were, is much more like living on top of the mountain instead of down at the base in the valley. life is like living in the valley of a mountain, but spiritual nature and spiritual world is like living above it. And you have a different perspective from that view, especially that you now know is confirmed because you survived death, that you exist eternally. That's going to change your point of view. So you're going to think, well, what is the overall best thing for me? Now your thinking, you see, is going to align much more with the spiritual nature anyway. You're going to be surrounded by other people who know about this as well. You know, I know there's all sorts of near-death experiences, and it's a very big subject to discuss in the first place. But if you just realize that your existence is eternal, I think I should mention that I mentioned nothing dies because physical stuff is not anything that has any being to it as such. It's just material. It's like an illusion. It's like a little play happening in front of you. It's not being itself. You are being itself. So you're more important than the physical stuff. We the individuals are more important than the universe we're in. In other words, it's there for our benefit. This is the kind of perspective you have. So you think, well, I need to make heaven for myself as a spiritual entity. So what's the best thing for me to do? And of course, each person is very, very unique. So each person will go through that transition in their own particular way. And what if they're particularly ignorant? Yeah. See, if you compare a very ignorant person with a very intelligent person, just for a start, how they perceive life is very different in the first place. So how they perceive their own passing is going to be particular to them as well. It's the same kind of thing. You know, and they may wake up a little bit, but some people don't, and they go straight back in. You know, there are so many different situations to cover when we're dealing with that. You've got the entire range.
When you say they go straight back in, are you saying simply is that coming back and reincarnating again quickly?
Well, some people are not. Some people they have such a bad attitude, right, that they don't want to do anything else. They just want to hang out where they were and just remain in. It's a bit like, you know, growing up and becoming mature is a struggle and a challenge because we're literally going from personal wishes to objectivity. Objectivity doesn't change to suit us, but our wishes continually develop and change all the time in comparison. And what we're talking about here is a certain kind of objectivity to our existence. You know, it's not just subjective. So there are consequences that you will experience as a result of your subjective thinking. They relate to each other. So someone who refuses reincarnation and has done terrible things here may be stuck in a certain place here. It reminds me of what happens in Thailand. I mentioned before that young people who offend and break the law when they're in jail are taught to meditate. But you see, whenever anyone breaks the law and they're caught by the police and it's a serious crime, they are filmed with the police taking that person back to the scene of their crime to actually reenact from start to finish everything that they did to commit the crime, and they put that on television for the whole country to watch. See?
Wow.
Yeah, this Thailand is very different.
So this is a form of embarrassment in some ways.
Yeah, exactly. It's shame. It's to shame, to try and get the person to realize what are you doing? We're all watching you. What are you doing? Here is sense. Here is an objective point of view that's beyond your subjective wishes.
Right.
You know, there's the great dilemma in life, really, as it were.
It's another way also that basically, like you said, shame, but also simply is that, you know, what you did was not in private, so to speak. We're going to reenact it and show it on television, so everyone will know who you are. And if you ever suppose to get out of jail or whatever, people are going to know who you are, and you're going to be, you know, like you're not. The big thing is the shame issue, though. You're right, completely. It's the shame.
That's right. I mean, some people don't feel shame. I don't know whether you're familiar with different psychologies, you know, psychopaths, sociopaths,
right. There are people that doesn't work with.
Right. That's right. That's exactly right. So there's different. They do it in an attempt to tell people in the country that everybody says this is unacceptable.
Right.
If you don't say anything, a childish person, if nobody says anything about what they're doing, like an animal, when an animal does something and nobody says, no, you can't do that, they carry on doing it as if it's
Right.
okay.
Right.
You see
Right.
what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's their technique. It's a way of trying to help people, trying to get the crime waves down, because human beings have a tendency to want to do what they want to do,
Right.
regardless of any rules.
Right.
Yeah, this is a basic thing. We have rules because we have societies.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going back to the basic question. So do we choose to, I mean, what I understand what you're saying, basically, if someone's just been here one time or two times or whatever, or even maybe, I don't know how many times, a few times, reincarnated, the problem simply is that they haven't learned a whole lot, because basically they haven't been here a lot, so to speak. It's a process, it's a progress. It takes time to do this, such and such, that you reincarnate, such and such. And many of us have been told, as I have been told when I was a young boy, this is your only life. You go around one time. That's it. And so the programming has been so intertwined with religion, so to speak, because they don't talk about the pagan ideas of reincarnation. They don't want that to be said, as far as I can tell. So
right. Well, they talk about it in terms of you going to heaven or hell, which essentially is exactly what everyone around the world has been saying anyway. But when they say hell, they don't explain to you what they mean by hell. There are two kinds of hell. There's personal, internal hell, experiential. Yeah, it's like either psychological hell during life or your own personal turmoil in your own spiritual condition when you pass over. I don't know whether you're familiar with the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Right, that's a very interesting read. It's
okay,
a very interesting read.
I better look at that particular book, I guess, too.
They call the abyss the bardo. The bardo. They specifically say you are in the bardo, and here is the characteristics of the bardo. And it says specifically, for goodness sakes, turn round.
Okay.
Basically, what they're doing is saying, turn around and look at heaven, because you're right next to it, but you don't see it because you're turned in the other direction. There's a thing, you see. These near-death experiences are fascinating because it shows there's an established consensus kind of reality on the other side anyway. It's not just a pitch black abyss. The abyss is your personally expanded mind. But you get that when you ascend, and your relationship with the abyss is somewhat different when you're not ascended, because you're not aware of it. See, when you're not aware of it, the other things come into play. I heard a near-death experience. I was watching it this morning during my break. Actually, I was fascinated because
you watch these pretty often.
Yeah, I watched all sorts of stuff. One of this guy was saying, when he died, he immediately found himself in a comfy chair in a cinema, and he's watching the cinema screen.
Right.
He's just died in a public toilet. Right?
Okay.
He's choked or something, and he's suffocated on his own vomit, and he's fallen down. He's died. He suddenly finds himself in a cinema, and on the screen is the scene of his death, as if he's looking at it from above. But he's sitting in a comfortable chair in a cinema. That totally reminds me of being in the abyss. It's extremely comfortable, just like that. It's just like you're in the most comfortable chair ever. So you're inside your head, in a sense. There's other things to say about it. It's very dimensionally confusing, the abyss, because it's zero dimensional. There's a lot to say about that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Layla was saying something here. She says, you were saying a few minutes ago, and I neglected to share what she said. She says, people often behave differently when they think or know they are being watched. Of course, they do.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's right. That's called the evil eye.
Scene. Yeah, you see a court scene. You'll see how most people are completely because they're seen guilty and they know they're guilty, and yet there's a there's a they don't show any expression whatsoever. They don't show anything. They don't want to show any weakness, so to speak, or even what I call fear, crying, or anything of that nature. Some people do, yes, but most do what I call have this blank slate or state in their mind. It's almost as though I've done nothing wrong. It's almost as they've told themselves, I've done nothing wrong. I've done nothing wrong, to the point that simply they believe what they're saying to themselves, you see.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I know there's a big court case that happened here in the state of South Carolina, and this point happened was simply is where my hometown is, and this guy was a lawyer, and he had a big addiction with what I call gambling, and somehow he got himself in so much trouble financially, and he was living beyond his means, and also he had a wife and son, and somehow he had to take care of that problem, and he took care of that problem by killing him. You see, his wife was becoming more and more concerned of what was going on in his life, whatever was going on, and he didn't want to tell her, basically. And so what happened simply is he got rid of both, not only his wife but also his son.
Wow. And
tried to point it out as two different weapons, as though there were two different types of, two different people there.
Yeah.
And there's film of him walking in the courtroom, and it's very there's no what I would call any guilt that seems in his face. It's like it's almost as though he's dead in himself. In other words, it's like his whole spirit's died with him, so to speak. That is, I've done nothing wrong. I did what I felt was right, But he doesn't say that because he's not saying anything. But you get that feeling as though there's no sorrow. I basically screwed up. I made a huge mistake here.
Yeah.
There's no remorse, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, you got off in tangents. I'm sorry.
That's
but back to the near-death thing you were sharing about the guy being in the comfortable chair.
Yeah, it just goes to show. There's another one I saw the other week. He was explaining that he went down the usual tunnel, the tunnel of light, and when he came out the other side, he was in what looked like the temple of Artemis, and columns, Greek white marble columns, marble floor, marble ceiling, and it was a long temple, and there were tables and chairs around, all made out of marble, all the way as far as the eye could see, with people talking with each other. And it was a counselor who was greeting people that were dying, and all the tunnels were coming to this temple. So people were coming in who were dying all the time, and they were greeted with counselors. That's slightly different to this guy who just found himself in a cinema. So I realized when I was in the abyss what its nature was when I came back from it, and analyzed what had happened. And it turns out you can invent anything you think of or want. But there are archetypes. See, we have a subconscious, and the subconscious produces archetypes that are always the same. One of those archetypes is a unicorn, for instance. A unicorn represents Christ.
Right.
You can use it to represent Christ consciousness or Christ himself, or you can point to it and as if to say this is the cloud of heaven as well. It's a unicorn. So it's a symbolic thing, a symbolic flavor, and this is how our subconscious works. It uses symbols. And of course, the natural world is full of animals and forms and shapes, and we're part of that. It's part of our fundamental nature. It's inherently contained in spiritual nature, physical nature. Likewise, spiritual nature is inherently contained in physical nature. That's the yin yang yang symbol. It has a little bit of each one in the other. In the white bit, there's a bit of black, that sort of thing. So sorry, I've lost track of exactly what point I was making there, because I've just gone off on something.
You were explaining again, like there was this guy going in the column such and such, and basically he has a different perspective. In other words, he's projecting.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, beg your pardon. That's right. So the idea I was trying to convey is that there would be a sort of fundamental nature to the other side that is recognizable It's probably archetypal. These temples are very archetypal. Like a church, they're made with specific proportions in mind that are relatable to high intellect, as it were. So the proportion of the width to the length will be the golden section and this sort of thing, because that relates to how nature is the halfway mark in nature between the infinite and the finite. That's how it sort of registers, like a fractal, fractals.
Yes. Layla said something about that last time. She said a fractal.
Yeah.
I recall.
Yeah. So I think, see, that there is this kind of automatic reception that you get on the other side. Other people, of course, they are individuals that you might have known before. They might greet you, but then some people would argue, well, hang on a sec, if you died 50 years after somebody, maybe a young brother died in his youth, and you die in old age, are you going to meet your little brother on the other side? But I thought you said there was reincarnation. How do you know he's not reincarnated and gone from the other side? So how can you meet him? What is all this? You come up with contradictions because the nature of spirit, the spiritual nature, is fundamentally timeless, and that is very, very particular. It has particular consequences. One of them is that you can have anything you can think of. So one of those people described that somebody came in from death to this reception area, and he suddenly became a 30-year-old version of himself.
Right.
And that this is the way he's going to look from now on in the spirit world. Okay, well, the thing is, you can literally make anything you want. When I was in the abyss, I made a lens from nowhere. It just appeared in front of me.
So you created it for your mind, right?
Yeah, I wanted to achieve something, and something appeared that allowed me to achieve that.
Okay.
I noticed. So it responds to your intelligence. Therefore, it's your expanded mind, but it seems to create objective things, but they're subjective as well because they're coming from you. Therefore, this confirms to me that the abyss is both subjective and objective at the same time. If you see what I'm saying, it has an objectivity. It's part of spiritual nature and manifestation has an objectivity because it has to be a certain way. See, so the abyss is a manifestation. It has a certain characteristic. It's an infinite expanse, but it's your expanded mind, so you can create anything you want in it. Do you see what I mean? So the subjective nature of it is that you can make anything you want, but the objective nature is that it's a permanent, just three-dimensional cinema screen for you to invent anything you want. So you see what I mean? There's an objectivity and a subjectivity to it at the same time.
Yes, Layla makes two comments here. She said, as we were talking about this, she says, has questions, says, I feel a potentiality. And then she says a little later on, she says she says paradoxes, referring to what you're talking about. I feel a potentiality, meaning I gather what you're talking about being subjective. You create, I think it's a way of something, how it makes you feel comfortable where you're at some way.
Yeah. And according to all these people, Earth is extremely difficult to have a life on Earth. It's extremely difficult. So you're treated well, naturally, normally on the other side. But it makes me wonder and question, because the only people explaining these near-death experiences are normal, average, decent people.
Okay.
I've not seen one explained by somebody who was a psychopathic murderer, for example. Do you see what I mean? What would their NDE be like? I wonder. Right. And some people say they spent 5 minutes in hell, and they hated it, and they wondered why, and all this sort of thing. It just shows that if you look at a human being, they are literally a miniature version of the overbeing that Kabbalah refers to as Adam Kadmon. Right. And the word Adam refers to the creative principle. So Adam Kadmon it's as if the creative principle has made the universe as his body. And he's going to use this universe to regenerate himself in a perfected state.
Okay. All right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if that's the totality of one being who is only the one creative principle, and all this universe is an expansion and expression of one being, then you, the one being in that universe as a microcosm, are going to have these attributes associated with you as well. So his subconscious, let's say, Adam Kadmon's subconscious mind is the abyss. Our subconscious mind is aspects of our own brain, let's say, linked to our spiritual nature, because our spiritual nature is that infinite abyss, effectively. We just haven't expanded into it yet. When we're born into a physical body, we're sort of contained in the body, and we need to be released at some point. Do you see what I'm saying? As a spirit, so you're reborn as spirit. So now you've gone through the physical nature, and you've generated a permanent house for yourself.
Correct.
In the process, which is the only purpose for it, in my mind.
Right.
So really, I mean, we don't know the fullness of near-death experience is a subject we don't know the fullness of, but we can gather the idea that there is an archetypal sort of consensus nature to it, that we're all going to look a certain way because that's what we're used to and it's comfortable for us, and et cetera, et cetera.
Right, because correct. It makes you feel it makes you feel not alarmed in some ways. You're seeing yourself at your midlife, so to speak, and you're healthy. You're well. Your thoughts, your brain works correctly. You're not seen at your worst when you pass away.
Yeah, and you're not overwhelmed by emotions anymore in spiritual nature. Emotions are an aspect of your physical body. It's an aspect of the beast that you learn to ride and control emotion and the intellect. In fact, the intellect as it questions and works without knowing. Like in the Gospel of Judas, that the apostles are always questioning and wondering what's going on. They have no idea what's going on. Every 5 minutes, they're asking, "What's going on now?" He's like, "What? You don't know?" The brain, the functions of the brain, the overly intellectualizing of everything. It's all physical aspects, wanting to know everything, which you can't. So you need to know poignant things, not everything. I don't need, there's a lot of useless information. I don't need to know what the ant colony is doing in the Amazon rainforest right now. It doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter, right.
What if I'm on the moon? What's happening on Earth doesn't matter to me anymore. If I live on the moon, etc. So yeah, we have these attributes and we have to learn to control them. But in the spiritual nature, you don't have those anymore. So the weight of physical existence has left you, and that changes your perspective as well. You feel a lot better. Put it that way.
It's. I was going to compare this with what I call the idea that when I've gone to many Christian burials, including my parents. I sometimes wonder if in my own mind, when there's these funerals that take place and, well, they're in a better place, they're in heaven. And I'm like, well, that kind of, no, I don't know if I agree with that. Or are they in heaven or hell or what? And no, as far as I know, the funerals I've gone to, no preacher says that they're in hell. But yet I'm saying to myself, well, did they go to church or not? No. Mm-hmm. So why are you telling people this stuff like this? Because are you making this up? In other words, I know someone who had a uncle, and he never wasn't involved in any kind of Christian stuff, and he never spoke about this person going to hell. And I'm like, okay, well, that's part of your belief system. So what are you doing here? In other words, if he's not a Christian in my mind thinking, then why is he not in hell? Meaning, I don't know if that's simply because these preachers are afraid to tell their loved ones that that's a great possibility in that point, meaning that is the Christian belief. That's not what I believe, but this is what they believe is saying. I'm thinking, okay, then are you being actually straightforward with these people? In other words, are you just making up stuff as you go along? I don't know if you follow what I'm saying here.
I think you have to be careful in those positions because the people in the family at a funeral are very upset usually.
Yeah, very emotionally, yes. But do you in some ways recall in your mind, if you want to be really even keel here,
Mm.
If you are so-called a Christian or not a Christian, why you're not direct with the family there? I guess is what I'm saying. Well, he never showed any initiative to one of those spiritual things. So as far as we know, he's not in heaven. But they would say, oh, the family, like you said, would get upset. But the point simply is, but it also, in some ways, I think sometimes, do you think the preachers are afraid or intimidated by the family in some ways also? Because this is, like you said, a very emotional time for the people, so to speak.
To be perfectly
That's why
honest,
that's why I didn't want to be a preacher or pastor. That was part of the reason. Even when I was in seminary, I come to realization, no, I don't want any part of this, because
you
this is an
deal,
enormous responsibility.
yeah, you deal with some very heavy things. Yeah.
Yeah.
To be honest, the use of the word heaven is in question, I would say, because I would describe a lot of people, you see, have had an experience with what we call divinity or God, and they say, well, that was like being in heaven. And it is being in heaven with God, and yet you haven't made heaven yet, the actual place that we call heaven. But heaven is an abode, so there's a specificity to the word heaven that is specifically geared towards what we call paradise, which is the cloud. That's specifically what we refer to as paradise or heaven, because God is involved with that. It's very confusing. Metaphysics is not something that people ruminate over. They don't know about it. They don't know that there are aspects to what we call divinity or deity. So God is pure spirit, and yet has no identity. So how can he have a persona? The people talk about these things and question these things. But God does have a persona. And the reason for that is because you're part of God. And God's persona is the perfection of you in the infinite future.
Right.
See, notice the idea of time, the passing of time. Spirit is timeless. So the passing of time doesn't mean anything to spirit.
No.
As such, it's a very different perspective. It's like looking down from the top of the mountain instead of looking up from the valley. It's just the opposite view. We're eternal. When we're in life, it's like, I'm going to die. What do I do? But all my thinking is consequential to the fact that I'm going to stop living at some point. See, normally,
right,
completely different mindset. So when we talk about God, we think of heaven. A pastor will say, well, they've gone to heaven. But what he really, if he wants to be very specific, you say, well, they've returned to their spiritual nature, which is true.
Right. That would actually be more solid ground to what really has actually happened.
Yeah, that is specifically.
That would give not only the family some, he's gone back, spiritual, and it also those who are in the so-called congregation would say, wait a minute. Oh, okay. They would understand that they're all spirits, you see. Type of thing.
Yeah.
Layla's got another question, a couple of them. She says, do you know what the reference to the heart being lighter than a feather is referring to?
Yeah.
And then she goes on, she says, is there physics to explain this concept, or is it just metaphysical?
Yeah, it's pretty much metaphysical, because the heart in ancient Egypt represented you as a character. So it's like putting yourself on the scale. Showing your heart is like putting you on the scale, you the person. So we were associated with our heart's direction in life. So if my direction was toward truth, my heart would represent the heart of a truthful person. I'm a truthful person. If my heart's desire was to damage other people as much as possible, that is my direction of my heart, and my heart will register that on the scale as being heavy. So whenever you want to harm what's outside of you, or take revenge or retribution, anything negative is going to associate with involving yourself in what's physical, in a drama, and that drama is made of heavy things. Physical nature is heavy. So what it's saying is, are you of a spiritual nature? In other words, have you ascended before you physically died and lost your body? If you've already ascended, your heart will be lighter than this feather of Mart.
Right.
This feather has a tiny weight to it. It associates with weightlessness, but it has a tiny bit of weight to it. If you have any weight in your heart, because you're unascended, you will be heavier than this feather, and you will not pass on to the to paradise because you haven't made it for yourselves. You don't deserve it. In a way, you haven't made what you can only have what you've made.
Right.
It's not about deserving it as such. It's just
No.
that you need to make it for yourself because it's you that
This
you're dealing with in your life.
Yeah.
So the sanctuary on the right hand side, it literally represents the cloud of heaven, but you might not think, you can't recognize the symbolism they're using because it's Osiris sitting there, but he's wrapped in a single bodysuit, turning his body into a phallus. That the whole point of making your whole body a phallus is that you're using the sexual association to show that, well, in sex, semen ejaculates from the top of a phallus.
Right.
And in spiritual union, in spiritual ascension, your soul becomes a spirit ejaculated out of the top of your head.
Right.
In a very similar manner. It's as
Right.
if you've been making love with God, and when you met God, you got married, and you've been
Right.
making love ever since. And now, a few days later, you're going to birth your child. At the same time, you're going to be rebirthed as spirit yourself. So that sanctuary on the right represents heaven, saying, here is the culmination of your physical incarnations. This is what they were for. But if your heart has any weight to it whatsoever, that creature sitting next to the scale with the mouth of a crocodile is going to eat you.
Right.
And that is just a symbolic way of referring to the fact that you're going to go, you're going to be reprocessed.
Right.
Reprocessed, yeah, back into creation, back into a life, because you're doing it to create the sanctuary.
Well, what about I mean, there are other people. This is a question. Let me say this. So Layla says a couple things. She says, so the lighter could be referring to radiance as opposed to weight. And then she says, oh, okay, weight, like baggage.
Yes.
It weighs you down.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
And that, you think about weighing you down, that means you're not going to heaven. That is your weight. If you're light as a feather, you float. You float up to heaven, so to speak.
But it's because when you meet God in that first instance, you realize and recognize that God has no weight. Nothing. So if you put God on the scale, he would beat the feather. He would easily beat the feather. Because you're meeting and experiencing God who has no weight, you now know for sure what it feels like to have no weight. So now there's no excuse for you to now, when you go back into your normal life after you've had this meeting with God, there's no excuse for you to carry more weight. You don't start picking up baggage anymore. You see, you remain weightless like God.
Right.
So you're completely fully detached from physical life in its entirety. It doesn't mean you don't have empathy or compassion. It simply means you understand its nature and that it is not the thing that you should be concerned about as such.
Okay.
If you get your concern changes, the focus of your concern elevates, as it were.
Is the weight part, is that, I guess what I'm trying to figure out, we say certain things about people or but then there's actions, there's, I don't like this person, but then you have this, that's just your thoughts or even saying them out loud. But what I'm trying to figure out simply is, those things count against you, or is it when you, which I don't think they are, but I might be wrong, is that when you go out and do something to this person, you say, I don't like them. So you let all the air out of their tires, so to speak. I'm going to hurt them some way. So in other words, you have malice in your heart. You're going to hurt them in some way because you don't like them. Either they've done you wrong in some way, or you such and such, So what I'm trying to figure out simply is, when you talk about weight, maybe I'm going too specific here. I've gathered simply is that by your works, you demonstrate who you are, what's happened to you. So it's not by what you say, it's the actions that you do that demonstrate.
That's right. Definitely. And more than that, metaphysical thinking looks at things over time. In that sense, what you do is what you become.
Okay.
So I can sit and think about anything. whether good or bad. It means nothing. If I don't take any action, it means nothing. Effectively,
Right. And we were told. I remember we were told as little boys in church that there's all basically God has all the records. In other words, He's got a film projector of your whole life, so to speak, and then
yeah,
He'll show you. And this is where you quote unquote. Well, do you remember this? Yeah, I do.
it's all
And
recorded. Yeah,
yeah, so recall, so to speak.
yeah, it's all
Uh,
recorded. Everything's recorded, by the way. Everything is
right.
recorded.
And
Everything.
what do they call that? You call it a certain word. Is it a part of your? Is that a part of the Akashic records? Or is that not? That's not part of the Akashic.
Akashic, yeah, Akashic would be the recording of everything that's happened in the universe. Yeah, that's the Akashic record.
Okay.
It's the actions of everything that's ever occurred. Yeah, spirit has infinite capacity. Infinite capacity. So it is mindful. It knows everything about itself at its highest level.
Right.
And it already knows what's happened in the universe from start to finish. That's something.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, go on. No.
Layla speaks as judgment, meaning holding something against someone, letting it all go, and just observing. What do you have to say about that statement?
There's a thing about the difference between establishing things in yourself such that you feel the effect of your change of mind. When you understand something that's deeper than what you knew before, it will have an effect on you. Your behavior might change as a result. So if you have a near-death experience and you realize we're all part of the same spirit and that you were actually actively trying to harm people before, you'll realize, no, I'm actually harming myself.
You are, so right.
Your understanding has changed your behavior. So by engaging in life like this, by realizing greater and better things, it changes our behavior. And it's what our behavior is like in the end that defines us, not necessarily what we've done in terms of maybe you did something terrible when you were 20 years old and you died at 80 years old. But when you're 80, you're a really good man.
Right. It's not.
It's right. So we can actually work off the idea of karma while we live, so that even if we did something bad way back then, it doesn't matter anymore. There is this thing about forgiveness. It's a massive subject. It's an enormous subject. How do we forgive? Who do we forgive?
You used a different word, Friday. You didn't. I mentioned karma, but you used a different word. You used a word that
consequence.
Consequence, right?
That's right.
Right.
Consequence.
There are consequences in life. If you supposedly get married to someone, a wife, a woman, and you treat her badly, there are going to be consequences because of that.
Yeah, depending on her attitude. I mean, she might be submissive and take it and like taking it.
Yeah, but there's still more consequences because you have damaged someone or hurt someone. Now that's the question. That's the question I also was going to ask. When you in your own family, are they there unsuspecting also that, how do I say it? In other words, do you choose your mother and father and your siblings? I asked, but the point simply is, are they there themselves in some ways helpful to you for you to grow up maturely as spiritually, or are they there to test you, or what? Are they, and then are you the same way with them, not knowing it, so to speak? That's a kind of a deep question, but do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah. According to these near-death experiences, just to draw from their experience, they say that we do choose our life. We do choose what we go into, and we actually plan our life.
Ah, okay.
It doesn't mean that when we're in it, we follow the plan.
No.
Because once you're in it, you've forgotten that you have a plan. You've completely forgotten.
Yes.
So to be honest,
memory bank is gone.
Yeah, but to be honest, if we're talking to a psychologist right now and we say that, and we say, look, these near-death experiences say that we plan our life. Can you imagine what a psychologist would think hearing that. They say, well, first of all, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
Near-death experiences are subjective experiences in traumatic circumstances, let's say. We have no way of gauging whether they're real or not. You know, what is real? We have to define what is real in the first place, which is a philosophical issue to start with, which is very, very deep. It's very, very difficult. It's a very difficult issue. So we have to take everything with a pinch of salt to start with. And I always go back down, I always boil it down to the essence of observation. You can always understand that there's a distinction between an observer and what they observe as literal opposites. So if what's observed is physical, the observer cannot be physical because they're the opposite, just by nature, just by logic. See, material cannot observe. It is observed. That there is a great distinction there. So we can establish, well, if the observer is the opposite to what they observe, and what they observe is transient physical nature, they must be its opposite, which is singular in nature and spiritual and eternal. And therefore we can work from there and start realizing what it means to physically pass over and just go back into our normal spiritual nature again. You know, people think that is not normal. See, what do you mean spiritual nature? What is the spiritual nature? We don't know about that. We know about physical life, but I don't know what you mean by the word spiritual. Well, what are you talking about?
Well, that word has been kind of been pushed away in society in the last.
It's one of those misused words a lot, like heaven. People think God is heaven, but there's a specificity to it that means that the cloud is heaven and God produces that for you.
Right.
You know, there is this great specificity. There are specific, poignant understandings that are not wishy-washy. You know, they're not vague. They all relate to each other. They all make sense, and we can start applying this to the after-death condition, and recognizing that in the abyss you can invent anything you want. You can reinvent the entire universe if you so wish. It's up to you. You can do anything in the abyss, literally. But after a while, once you get over the excitement of I can have anything I want and do anything I want, once you get over that at a certain point in your little experience there, you're going to realize that none of it means anything.
No.
It doesn't mean nothing because you're just inventing it. It has no objectivity to it as such.
No objective, right.
So what you're doing is reaching to the objective, standardizing something that is useful in the objective, so you're not just left with your subjective nature.
She's got a question here. Well, are you finished? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, I mean, we could.
I keep interrupting you. I'm sorry.
No,
she's got some good questions here.
Yeah.
So Layla asks here, she says, so would the consequence be relative to the temperament of the individual that is experiencing the action?
Yeah.
Or is it based on the intention of the individual taking the action, or a combination? In other words, if I understand what she's saying, you know, if I'm guessing this is what you're saying, something to do with someone's being wronged in some ways that is experiencing the action, or is it based on the intention of the individual taking the action, or is it a combination that someone is allowed that to take place? I think I understand that somewhat. Meaning that I'm guessing this. I don't know. It's like someone's treated badly, and the person who allows it to continue. In other words, supposedly, let's just say a man is beating his wife. Okay. I'm guessing this. I don't know. But the point simply is, we know that that's wrong in the first place. So a man doesn't beat his wife. Okay. He should treasure her. And instead, he comes from a background, is what he saw in the past. That's the way you treated a woman. Okay. In a deformed way. But the woman is trying to be submissive and doing the right thing. And but she gives in all the time, and then she's the one who suffers. Now, I might be wrong. If that's wrong, Layla, tell me. I'm just guessing at that. That's just what I can remember looking at my dad. I've asked him questions before he passed away, and And I understood some things that happened in his life. He was the youngest boy. He was the youngest child in the family. And I remember talking to his siblings, and they would say to me, "Well, he was spoiled. He got his way. He pretended to be sick or whatever." And I'm like, "Okay, all right, okay." So he got his way. And but then I talked to my dad, and he would recall a certain particular person he called Uncle Jake. Uncle Jake was someone who had some money, a little bit of money in the family, and he would allow him some freedom. My dad never talked about his dad. He never really ever went into any kind of detail with his real dad. But this
Mm.
Uncle Jake guy, who was his uncle, would allow him to make a little bit of money by using a tractor or a mule at that time and plow the fields. So he was benefited by some type of money wise. And then at the age, I think you recall, called to me simply, he was like 12 or 14 years old. Well, at those ages, if you were capable of reaching the gas pedal and the brake pedal, you could drive, so to speak. And he remembers it simply as he was allowed to drive his Uncle Jake's truck to town and pick up something such and such. Okay, well, that's pretty special for a boy at that age. He's given a lot of independence, so to speak. So he looks up to this particular guy, and yet he sees how he treats his wife, and he beats up on her, and he controls her. And so my thinking simply is my dad picked up that type of thinking and said that was okay in his mindset.
Mm.
And I don't know. I could had conversations with my mom, and it was more psychological instead of beating up. In other words, it wasn't always physical; it was psychological way of dealing with someone.
Yeah.
Well, you're stupid. You don't have a brain, whatever type of thing. Da da da. And so it's actually I wonder it's even more psychologically to destroy someone that way than actually physical, but I don't know. But the point simply is, I remember simply is that's not right. Even my own mind saying, that's not right. It's not the way to do anybody. But
Mm.
my point simply here, I've gone all off and such and such. But I saw that in my dad, and I said, I don't want to be like that. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't want to be like that.
Right.
And so because it's detrimental to someone else. But I can see how someone who is insecure, which I believe my dad was, but we're all insecure in some way or another, in some way, if you understand. And so he was insecure. So the only way he knew how to right the ship, when my mother said, "Well, I'm not for that," or whatever, he would become like, "Well, no, no, you can't do this. I'm the boss in this family, so to speak, or I'm the da 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 da,
Mm.
and it's going to be my way.
Yeah.
You're on
Yeah.
my ship, so to speak." So
Yeah.
what I'm going. The idea simply is that are there lessons being learned by both parties in the situation? In other words, the woman needs to stand up to him and say, "You're not going to do this anymore to me. You're not going to hit me. You're not going to say anything bad about me or whatever, in a derogative way." Yes, you can be constructive in that conversation, but you're not going to detriment to me and make me feel like a 3-year-old child, so to
Yeah.
speak.
A lot of these things are meaningless.
Oh,
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. And it's in
okay.
the Bible is this powerful. The Bible is the most powerful book on the planet. In the New Testament, and this is going to cover what Layla was asking and what you've just been talking about, pretty much in one go.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember which gospel it's in, but there's a moment when Jesus says, when somebody attacks you or hurts you, turn the other cheek.
Right.
You
Right.
know that one?
Yes, I do.
You know that? Right. So most people will interpret that as saying, if I'm a Christian, if I become a Christian and Jesus has said this, it means that I should allow people to harm me.
Right.
Did you understand why people
Yeah.
would think like that? Because he
Yes.
says, well, if someone hits you on this cheek, show them the other one, so, as if to say, let them
Here.
hit you again
Right.
and
Right.
again and again, and just you let people destroy you.
Right.
That is not what is being said at all. What he's saying is, do not take revenge.
Oh.
That's what
Oh.
he's saying by saying that. do not take revenge. If you take revenge, you may as well dig 2 graves, because one of them will be for
Yes.
you. Do you understand? Because what you're doing is becoming the same as your enemy.
Correct.
You are
You're
lowering
no
yourself
different than
to
that
their
other
level.
person is. So the best thing to do that person can do is to
Yeah.
walk away. Is to
Yes.
simply say, yeah.
Exactly. So now let's take all the ins and outs of human relationships. And is there a tally? Is there a score? So let's say a husband and wife have been fighting all their lives, and they both die at the same time in a car crash, and they both
Okay.
end up. And people might think, well, how do they tally up and balance out their score? Because he did
Right.
this when he was 46, and when she was 52, she did that to him. And then he did this, and then she did that. And it's like, what is this, 20? It's like that thing. What should we do, Lord? When should we give alms? Should we give alms to the poor? When should we pray? And how long should we pray? And what should we say when we pray? And he just says, look, shut up. Don't tell lies. That's it. There's nothing else to say.
Right.
Don't tell lies. And what he means by that is, for God's sake, just be honest with yourself. When you're young, recognize that you're young and stupid. That is being honest with yourself. And in so doing, you'll realize yourself as a better person, because you're looking at yourself instead of wasting your time looking at the outside world trying to fix it. It's changing all the time. Every time you fix it, it's changed. So you've got to keep fixing it all the time. What are you wasting your energy on that for? That here is a thing you need to deal with. In the same sense, whatever people have done to you, you must grow out of. You have to overcome this wish to get back on people. We see it in movies all the time. Movies about revenge.
Revenge, right.
Revenge. Have you seen John Wick?
John who?
John Wick. It's a fantastic set of films. It's called John Wick. It's Keanu Reeves playing a guy who was an assassin.
No, I haven't never seen
Right.
that.
So he's from Belarus. He was trained and grew up as an assassin. And he fell in love. He gets married. His wife dies not long after they're married, and he's absolutely devastated. And these random idiots turn up. They bump into him at a gas station because he's got a really nice car, and they want his car. So they follow him, basically, find out where he lives. They knock him out. They kill his dog. There was a last gift from his wife, who's now dead. They kill the dog, and they basically trash his place, and they trash his vehicles, and they steal his car. And instead, so what he should have done is just repair what he's got and leave it alone. But he goes out on a revenge streak, and he kills everybody. Everybody dies, like from start to finish. And it's a killing fest. And it epitomizes human nature in my mind. Epitomizes it. Because when someone does you wrong, the first reaction is to do the same back.
Right.
As if you're balancing things out. But what you're actually doing is unbalancing things even further.
Yes.
So to balance out, you need to step away. And it will naturally rebalance by itself, because balance is the natural state. It's a very natural thing.
What would you say simply is like, let's think about this. This is another thing that pops in my mind, because I grew up a Christian. So, and yes, I did make those mistakes with turning the cheek. And I was maybe it's the same question, but it was like balancing a checkbook. If someone treats you badly or whatever, you now, quote unquote, make an extra effort to do good to them.
You don't have to. You don't have to do anything.
This was what was taught to me. Well, if they did you wrong, you don't do two wrongs. So you make a right to them, as though to get their attention, so to speak. Okay.
You might not want that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that's what was taught to me. See, and so you would try to do something right or whatever, or you would even pray for them, so to speak. Change their hearts or whatever. God changed their hearts or whatever. This is how the church does some of the things. And my point simply is that probably the best thing to do is to simply just realize it was a situation, what took place, and just move on instead of actually trying to be good to people, because they're gonna look at it and say, because they're not coming from the same place you are, and they're gonna look at what is his motive, why he's trying to be good to me. What does he want from me? I don't know.
I'm reminded of attention-seeking children. or attention-seeking pets. I mean, we watch a program about dogs behaving badly,
Oh,
and some of these dogs just the owners aren't relating to their dogs properly, so the dog is
oh,
confused and it's doing things the owner doesn't want. So sometimes the dog will cry for attention.
right,
And the trick to stop them doing that is to ignore them in a normal circumstance. Obviously, if they're drowning and they're trying to get your attention, you want
right.
to
I
help them
understand
out,
that.
obviously, you know. But if
Right,
they're just crying for attention because they want a bit extra food that they shouldn't
right,
have, you
right,
know, and you treat them as if you should ignore them for a while, and then they'll understand that they shouldn't behave like that because it won't get them anywhere.
right,
In
right,
the same kind of way, when someone does you wrong, your behavior as a result from then on is going to affect that relationship. So if somebody comes and destroys my car, let's say, and I know who
right.
it is, and I go and destroy their car, have you seen Laurel and Hardy?
Yeah, I
You
seen
seen
that a long time ago.
Yeah, so Laurel and Hardy did a short, I think it was 20 minutes. It's called Tit for Tat.
Yeah, right.
Tit for tat, right? It starts out really simple.
And
They
then
go
does it
into
work?
the next guy's shop. They run a shop, a hardware shop, and the guy next door has also got a hardware shop. It's competition. So
Ah,
he goes in. He messes up their pens, and they
okay.
think, oh yeah. Oh, so they go around to his shop now, and they mess up his paints. So he
Oh,
goes down to their shop and he smashes all their bulbs. They go around to his shop and they break all his windows, and it
it just
escalates completely
explanation
out of
gets worse and
control.
worse.
Completely out of control. Yeah.
Right,
And in the end, both shops are completely and entirely trashed.
right.
So no one has anything left to
No,
sell because they've
no,
destroyed each other's
each
shops.
other.
So
Yeah,
this is where it goes. This is where tit for tat goes. So you don't want tit for tat. You don't do the same to someone who's done something to you. You behave in a way that shows them that you deserve respect.
right,
You
right,
see, so I've ever since I've met God, I thought, well, I want to be like that.
right,
Because I've had role models in my life, like up until that point, and now God is my role model, and I know what He's like, and I want to be like that because it's the
right,
best way there
right,
is,
right,
you know. And one of His things is when I read the New Testament, I understand it as it is. So that statement about turn the other cheek, very few people can interpret that properly. They think it means allow people to carry on harming you in a way, you know. It sounds like that, but we can't actually do that. So people reject that particular statement and quote an idea as a result because they can't literally do it, because that's not what it means. It simply means don't take revenge.
right.
That's what it's trying to say.
Uh, Layla's
So,
got a
so
couple. I'm
yeah,
sorry. Go
no,
ahead.
that's it. That's it.
Okay. Layla's got a couple questions, and um, she's that's how far we've been talking. Is the cloud the substance or material which creates or underlies material reality?
It seems to be the informer. It's as if we, in that seed root or root condition, we are the source of light for that condition, and the cloud is a source of information. It looks very, very complicated, very complex, because when you look at it close up, it turns out it's actually fiber bundles, and it might even be a single bundle of fibers that are curling and knotted up on itself or something. But that's what it looks like. I think it's just because that's what the inside of your pineal gland looks like. See, because
Okay.
it literally represents the inside of your pineal gland. It's a registration of the shape of the inside of the gland, and the pulse comes from within it to without. So it registers from this gland, this cloud formation. I was wondering what it was when I was looking at it. I thought it can't be made of water vapor, even though it's associated esoterically with water, because it looks like a cloud, and clouds are made of water. So we associate the color blue with it. That's why
Right.
royal blood is blue, by the way. They
Right.
say, why is royal blood blue? Well, it's blue because of this cloud, and the cloud makes you royal. This is a source of royalty. This is why
Right.
royalty has authority, because this is
Right.
God's authority on earth. So you see, there's all these associations that redundantly show you're getting the right idea anyway. But yeah, the cloud is the material aspect of what is spiritual. It's the most perfect material thing that God makes. It's a diamond made from clay, and the clay is just basic energy. we'd say, basic material itself. And
Right.
this is the best creation that God makes with it. And with it, it contains the information that becomes the material formations in the universe. For example, it's associated with the head of a lion, the cloud.
Right.
And it actually looks like the head of a lion. It's as if a lion is there looking at you, but it's all cloud. See, it doesn't have eyes, but the two beams coming out the front are associated with its frontal eyes.
Right.
Even though they're coming out of its nose, basically.
Right.
But you can see the association with lion, and the fact that you were very brave to have the faith to get to this position. That you're now an angel. It took courage to do that, and the lion represents courage. You might remember the Wizard of Oz. The cowardly lion in the Wizard of Oz is looking for courage. And when they finally end up in the Emerald City, which represents heaven, this cloud, of course, they find the great and powerful Oz, who turns out to be just some gimmicky thing that isn't actually real, in the same sense that the devil turns out to be just the indifference of truth.
Right.
See, this the objective indifference of truth is the devilish thing, but it makes physical nature, which is now associated with ego, identity, jealousy. The devilish nature is this idea of identity. But in the Emerald City, of course, the lion now gets his courage. It represents your ascension. The Wizard of Oz is a story.
Right.
There are 4 people because you have 4 somatic centers.
Right.
You see what I mean? So who's looking for the Tin Man is looking for a heart. The Scarecrow is looking for a brain.
Right.
He's brainless. And he's looking to become an ascended so that his brain can now be clear-sighted. It's very, very symbolic, the Wizard of Oz. But yeah, the lion, I mean, lots of creatures are associated with the cloud as well, like a horse. It can be associated with the head of a horse because the cloud is actually quite long.
Right.
It does have quite a bit of length to it. It's not just a blocky sort of cubic lump. It's an extension of cloud. Like a pillar of cloud. It's called a pillar of cloud in Exodus.
Right. Layla's got another question. Is my understanding correct with what Phil is explaining, that the action is the balance of the emotion or thought of the individual, so it is balanced by that individual, not by another? So
I think what she's trying to get at, personally, I think, is the value of forgiveness.
Right.
See, because if you can forgive everyone that's done any harm to you, which is the opposite of wanting to take revenge or retribution, that is the best status you can have.
Yeah, it would be.
So imagine your true self, what God is like, what God would want from you. Imagine someone coming to you and you have a bad attitude. Would they want to spend time with you? Well, no, because you've got a bad attitude, and it's very unpleasant talking to you. But if you have a pleasant demeanor, it means you're a very forgiving. Spiritually, forgiveness is the pleasantness of spirit. It's a pleasant demeanor, and that pleasant demeanor attracts your true self to you as well, because your true self is very pleasant. It's the nicest person you've ever encountered in your life. I've never met anyone as nice as God. Never. Utterly merciful and forgiving. Ultimately, for just completely forgiving. He knows how difficult life is. If you're honest with yourself, you'll have a direct relationship with God. If you're honest with yourself, very powerful.
What you mean by honest with yourself is not.
Think truthfully, be real, think really, and be honest about what you're thinking. I don't understand this. I'd like to understand this. That's an honest mentality.
Yeah, it's not like what popped in my head was like not beating up on yourself and saying what a pitiful person I am, or da da da.
Oh no, forget that. That's a waste of time. What a waste of time.
Right.
No.
This is what people think in their minds. Simply as well, I'm just not worthy, and that's not true. You see, that's how. But the pride. See, this is when I share these things, sometimes I get a sense of what other people as well. It's too late for me, or and I'm like, where do you get that idea? Where is it too late? You're still alive.
Yeah.
You still can change.
Yeah.
Why would you want to? Why would you want to close the book on yourself when you haven't passed away yet? That doesn't make any sense. What I mean by people just quit. They don't. They just stopped trying. And I'm like,
Yeah.
but you don't understand. That's part of the deal here. You must be a workman that is, someone who's doing something, doing it for the right motive, that eventually it will accomplish good in your life. See, it can't. You don't. But I just get the sense that people, I feel it from other people. Well, I'm just not good enough. I'm like, where do you get that at? None of us are good enough. I mean, come on, get off of the
self-pity.
Self-pity stuff and move on.
Yeah, you don't need that.
You're not as bad as you think you are. You're not as good as you think you are. Okay.
That's right. That's right. And
so
nobody's perfect.
Balance there. You see.
Yeah, nobody's perfect.
Right. I mean, I haven't met a perfect person. If I did meet a perfect person, I'd wonder if they're really real.
Yeah, right.
Because that would scare me half to death. Because I'm
right.
Because in reality, they probably are psychologically messed up. They're putting on a front, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Gurus are like that, funnily enough.
Yeah. They'll refer to what they call four centers, which are represented in the Wizard of Oz. I've heard of the head, heart, and I don't know what that is. HARA. Brain, heart, courage. What is the fourth? Isn't it also to do with what I would call the centers being your head, your heart, your midsection? What is it called? Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm wrong.
What's that?
I'm thinking of chakras, but there's not four of those, so I'm wrong on that.
No. There's four somatic centers. The word somatic means body. It's just the Greek word for body. Soma means body. So it's bodily centers. You have a head that has a center, it's a pineal gland. You have an upper body and a lower body. The upper body center is effectively next to the heart, or to do with the heart. The lower body center is your navel.
Right, the solar plexus, so to speak. Right.
Yeah, the solar plexus is the navel, effectively, and then down below in your groin area, you have everything to do with your physical senses.
Right. Okay.
So it turns out that thinking, you can think without engaging any physical senses whatsoever. Right. And thinking is a spiritual pursuit. Contemplation on truthful, decent things is a spiritual pursuit. In the opposite sense, making love and having sex, indulging in that, you engage every single sense.
Okay.
Can you see that? Because making love is about taste, sight, touch. Right. You can hear, the partner, etc., etc. So it's a fully physical engagement. But in the opposite sense, the spiritual engagement is thought and thinking in the air. So you have these somatics. They're called somatic centers, and they each have an identity in the Book of Revelation. For example, your heart center is referred to as the lower mind. The lower mind, because the lower mind is ruled by the emotions.
Correct.
So the higher mind is the one that stands above the emotions and can see that it's just emotions. It's not about being cold.
More objective instead of subjective.
Yeah, it's not about being cold. It's about seeing through the nature of emotion and what it is, to the actual situation, because emotion can turn your activity in a certain direction. Like taking revenge. You're angry with the person because they've harmed you. I don't know whether you've seen a film with Gerard Butler. What's it called? It's the one where his wife and child are kidnapped and murdered in front of him, and he takes revenge on everyone who had anything to do with that. I don't know what Law-Abiding Citizen. It's called Law-Abiding Citizen. It's an unbelievable film. Unbelievable.
You must watch a lot of movies, or have watched a lot.
Yeah. I love movies. Yeah, I'm a bit of a movie buff, because a lot of them are made by Jews, and because of that, they are full of education. So
Yeah,
the
and
Jews are
they're actually hitting you over the head with it over and over and over again.
yeah, Jews are great educators.
Right,
They
right,
really are. They're very, very, very good, very clever.
right.
Yeah, but anyway, uh,
Um, anyway, I was gonna, yeah. We really hadn't yet even got into your book. I guess I, which is fine. It's okay. Um, you mentioned something I wanted to ask also real quick. You you have a different take than I did in this area because you mentioned it last Friday, and you spoke about the Masons. You had a positive attitude towards them
mm,
compared to what I would say that others have compared to them. That is, because I've had what I call a negative perspective towards them. Like, this is what they did, da 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 da. George Washington was a Mason, or so and so was a Mason, Ben Franklin, da 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 da. What kind of people are these people, da da da. And I get this. I'll be honest, I have a negative perspective upon them.
mm.
Uh, and maybe it's because I listened to others who've said these things to belittle them in some ways. I don't, that's where I would think it would be at. It may be also, to do with what I would call politically. They tend to be what I would call somewhat active in the political realm. And
I'm just
we
going to get
think,
2 seconds. 2 seconds.
sure, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, beg your pardon. Just got a visitor.
Okay. Is that your kitty cat?
It is, yeah. He's rolling around on the floor. Right, okay. Sorry. Yeah, these people you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest,
Yeah, you can be honest. Please be honest.
yeah, when you have these organizations and you have different kinds of people in the organization, they all have to agree on there's a certain agreement between them, otherwise they're not
Right.
brotherhood. They have a certain gentleman's agreement in their group, but each one of those individuals has their own life and their own personal interests.
Right.
So I mean, it's just to explain that they're not all clones, they don't all think alike.
Okay.
So
Okay.
just like us, we have our own way of seeing things. Of course, Freemasonry hones one's thinking, as it were, to a certain extent, in how we pursue thought and contemplation, and how we pursue our relationships with others and ourselves. So some of them may have certain leanings. That there's also the issue when you go back in time of the way they viewed other people on the planet. For
Right.
instance, natives in what we now call third world countries.
Right.
If you're turning up in a fantastic vessel on the ocean and you've got a lovely uniform and you're there on behalf of royalty and you're a Freemason and you're very
Right.
proud of that, and you turn up and you see nothing but savages
Right.
where you've gone. These people are savages, you might say to yourself. Their customs and ways are savage. We need to explain that there are better ways than this to these people and make the world a better place as a result. See, there's an English mentality that I see when I look back in recent history from the last few hundred years about going out into the world and claiming resources for oneself, as it were, going to these places, kind of taking over and
Right.
enforcing your way. But according to you, you're instilling a better way to the people who are native. And if they have an issue with that, then we'll beat them with sticks and force it on them because this is better for them. Do you see what I mean? It depends
Right.
on
There's a book. There was a movie I saw with what's his name? Back in 1993. With a famous. He hasn't done but very few movies. David. It was done here during the Revolution, so to speak. There before the Revolution, actually, at Fort Henry in New York, and Fort William Henry. And there's a British soldier that comes back, and he says, "I thought he says, I've never seen such preposterity. It's, in other words, the British giving in to the Americans to fight. I thought we were here to make England to make all things in the world England or something of that nature, like England.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the guy who says, we can't force these colonists to go along with us. Okay, we have to compromise here.
Yeah.
In other words, because we're on a different ground here. These people are from Europe. They're not savages, so to speak. And they're fighting out and toiling, whatever, such as. But he says, I thought the world, what England was supposed to do was to transform the world into English. In other words, make it all England.
Yeah.
And that attitude as an American was like, who the hell are you? I mean, who are you? You don't have any right to be here, so to speak, because that's the idea of American. It's like, because this is like it's a rebel spirit, which I also live in the South, so that'll tell you that somewhat rebellion type of spirit, such and such. No, you don't have that right, such and such. Da, 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 da. But anyway, yeah, I was just thinking of Daniel Day-Lewis. That's who it was. It's in that movie. Which he's done very few movies. I don't think but 2 or 3 movies. I think he did a movie on Abraham Lincoln and did this movie also. But it was just interesting. And then there was Indians involved too, because this is part of the French-Indian War. This is what this was all about. And the French were here, and there was a fight based upon basically, a skirmish between the French and the English. And eventually the French will eventually get beat. In some ways, and they take off and they leave, so to speak. So, but anyway, kind of got off on a tangent here. So we spent an hour and 30 minutes here on a few questions. Layla, do you have a question here? We never got into, so far we haven't even gotten into the book, that Heaven is a Cloud. If you have a question, you're welcome to ask, but if not, we'll let Phil talk more about his book, Heaven is a Cloud. So I'm waiting for her. So is that a cat or a dog?
Yeah, it's a cat. Yeah, it's a lion-like cat. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a male, but he comes across as sort of female.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's getting feisty. So.
He's getting feisty.
Yeah, he's purring away, and he likes to play as well when you stroke him. Yeah,
they tend to be that way. You want to play with them, but then they get really serious. It's like, then they get their paws out and the nails out. Okay, I got the flu here, so.
Right.
She says she would love to hear more about the book. So I have no more questions at the moment. Thank you. I would love to hear more about the book. One thing I can tell you, Layla, is that the book, you can go to Phil Langdon's YouTube channel, and you can look on the page there, and you can find the book. You can download the book. In other words, it's an electronic book, and you can read it for yourself. He's not only that book, but the other books he has also. He talks about the book. You deal with the book of Revelations. Also, you have that there. You have
Gnostic texts.
Also.
No, because I'm forced to interpret them because I've never heard anyone interpret them properly. Some people come close. They do a reasonable job, but they obviously can't identify the realistic nature of it. They've only got what's written.
Right.
Which is a problem. It is a problem because what's written was written before we had science, psychology. It's the old way of talking about this sort of subject. It's very biblical. It's very riddle-like. They love using riddles because you can contain information in a riddle that is very useful. So in this book, I've given what I think are the most useful ways of looking at how we can view this cloud and what it means, where it comes from. And everything about it. So first of all, it is the chapter "Know Thyself" is an explanation of what happened to me in Angkor Wat, and then followed by the ascension when I came home in detail. It's only about 14 pages worth of writing, but there's lots of graphics in this book as well, so you can see what I'm talking about.
Right.
So after you need to know that experience, otherwise everything else in the book is meaningless. So that's a sort of reference to the rest of the book. And then I go into the idea of divine leverage, which looks at the principles of sacred geometry as they relate to our natural world. and I go from the principles right into the natural world and explain them as a 3-act play process. Because everything physical processes, and you can idealize the concept of process as a 3-act play. It's a very simple idea, the before, during, and after situations, and you can apply that to the whole universe to say that, well, that it came from a seed and it became this tree we call the cosmos, and of course a tree reproduces the original seed and the branches in its branches, and that's what's going on. So we have to identify what that seed is, if it's the cosmos, and that's the hardest thing, of course. But spiritual ascension is supposed to give that to you, and literally take you to that root so you can see it and experience it for yourself. And that's what I'm talking about for the rest of the book. So that experience is you in your expanded nature, which is an abyss, which is an infinite void. This is your spiritual nature. It's the continuity of eternity, the abyss, and you are the discreteness of that same eternity. So you have an awareness point in the abyss itself, which is your own expanded nature. And next to you is the cloud of heaven. So the cloud of heaven is going to be spoken of throughout this book by referring to how people have spoken about it in the past. And the first one is to look at Christianity. The third chapter is called House of God, because it looks at the principles in Christianity and redresses them in terms of the cloud of heaven. So I identify Jesus Christ as the cloud of heaven in the book, and I explain exactly why that is. He also associates with the colors red, white, and blue, which are the colors, of course, of the Union Jack and the Union Jack flag.
I know it's red, white, and black.
Yeah, it's black, white, and red is the nature of the abyss, the cloud, because the cloud is white and red, but the abyss is black. So that gives you black, white, and red. Okay. Everybody who works for royalty wears black, white, and red. You'll notice if you look.
Right.
Judges in court, a crown court, they wear black, white, and red.
In England, right?
It's because they're servants of royalty, and royalty represents this situation. You know, this angelic ascension. Red, white, and blue is associated with the cloud only. The blue is not associated with the abyss as such.
Okay, blue would represent the sky, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but they use blue because it's a cloud, and clouds are normally made of water, and water is normally blue.
Right, correct.
So they can use the blue. You know, royalty have a blue sash.
Okay.
Yeah, the blue. That's part of royal regalia. The blue is the cloud. It's saying I'm a member of the host of heaven.
Right.
So I am an angel. That's what they're saying. Royalty is saying we are angels. We are of the same nature as angels. Even if we're not literally angels, we're brought up in that nature, and we have their manner, we have their behavior, we have their principles and their morality, which is very important, which extends to Freemasonry. See, Freemasonry is the morality of angels.
Okay.
It's a brotherhood that covers the morality aspect of angelic nature. So red, white, and blue. Once again, the cloud is literally white, but it's supposed to be. It's associated as a lamb that's been slain, and therefore it's bleeding, and these beams of light that come out of it are associated with its lifeblood, and blood is normally red. Right. So the cat wants to go out. Hang on, just let him out. Hang on.
Okay.
Can you let him out the front door? Thanks. I think he wants to go. Okay, so yeah, I mean, there's lots of colors. So every color has an association with this idea. Black, white, and red, blue, white, and red. The Union Jack is literally a representation of the cloud of heaven. By the way, I don't know whether you can see that. The English flag.
Yeah, the English flag is they call it a double cross.
Yeah, right.
You know,
double square.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the same principle as double square. You get it's in my book actually. The sacred geometry. The double cross is just an aspect of geometric philosophy applied to human interaction, you could say. Because squaring a circle is a geometric operation, but it applies philosophically to our process by making heaven. Making heaven is associated with squaring a circle.
Right.
Because of the idea that it's impossible. It's impossible to define a center to what's infinite. It doesn't have a center naturally. So you are doing the impossible by creating the cloud of heaven, because it now represents a central position in the infinite abyss. See,
I didn't mean to take you off the tangent here. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. There's so much to say, though. We're in the book, yeah. So House of God, the 3rd chapter, is really about Christianity. I talk about the nativity, and the 3 wise men, and Joseph, Mary, and Jesus are 6 points of correspondence that generate or correspond to the Star of David. And the Star of David, of course, is the union of energy and spirit that generate heaven. Heaven is the unification of energy and spirit. So the Star of David represents the cloud of heaven. The 4th chapter goes into Gnostic metaphysics, and it shows you that a lot of things in the past are coding the understanding that I'm explaining, that there is a root condition that involves the observer and the cloud of heaven in a relationship, and those two are literally kind of built into the structures that we make around the planet. For example, the Vatican and St. Peter's Square. St. Peter's Square has like a sundial in it, and it has a needle in the middle there. So that represents the position of the cloud of heaven with the beams of light coming out of it in association with the sun and the moon. So the Vatican building is a representation of the person, the observer, who finds themselves in this ascended root condition, looking at the cloud. So the relationship between those two is coded into the Vatican and St. Peter's Square, proving that people know about this already, and they've always known about it. That's what I've discovered, that what I'm talking about has always been known, and it's not divulged. So I don't know whether I should be doing this, you see, as a result. I wondered how dangerous it was, but I seem to be getting away with it. Maybe it's because I don't get many views. I don't know, but we'll see. So Gnostic metaphysics is really about how metaphysics has been encoded into Renaissance paintings as well. Many Renaissance paintings and Dutch masters paintings contain metaphysics, and they are just metaphysics. They're just variations on the same theme. Normally, there are 4 people in the painting, and they represent 1, 0, infinity, the 3 aspects of deity, and the cloud of heaven as the 4th. So we have 3 musketeers and D'Artagnan, who joins them after a while. That's a metaphysical story, the 3 musketeers who become 4. Goldilocks and the 3 bears, there are 3 bowls of porridge. 3 again. Anytime you see 3, you're being told about spiritual nature. Metaphysical nature is 3 aspects of spirit. 1 aspect that's just the union of spirit and energy. In the book of Revelation, it goes into even more detail about that and uses the number 3.5. Very interesting. 3.5 times 12, for instance, gives you 42. And 3.5 times 12 is like, so 12 refers to your brain, and 3.5 is the spiritual aspects of metaphysics, because the cloud is half spiritual and half physical. With 3 spiritual aspects associated with that, there are 3.5 spiritual aspects to metaphysics and half a physical aspect, if you want to categorize them like that. So they use the number 3.5, and they associate it with your initiation period being halved, as if the first half you're a bit silly, but now you've gotten used to it. The second half is the better half for your initiation. It's the one that takes you closer to your ascension. So there's all these associations with these numbers that relate to metaphysics. So I show you that some of the Renaissance paintings and what they mean and why people are doing what they're doing. There's a guy in a Caravaggio painting. There's Jesus at a square. They're sitting at a square table. It has to be a square, and he's extending his right hand forward like this. So he represents this cloud with his right arm extending towards you, and the man who's kind of receiving his hand extended out is rising out of his chair in surprise and alarm.
Oh.
So he's doing that because he's surprised. Why is he surprised? Because he's arrived in the abyss and he's turned around and there's a thunking great cloud behind him that he didn't expect. It's like, what is that? What's that doing there? What's that?
Right.
You know, it's like, what the hell's this? What's that doing there? It's that kind of thing. He's registering this surprise. So you can see, and the guy next to Jesus at the table has got his arms extended out like this. You think, what the hell's he doing? What's he talking about? Did he catch a fish this morning? And he's saying, I caught a fish this big.
Right.
Yeah, is that what he's doing? No. He's projecting out a scroll. His arms represent the scroll that shoots out that nobody knows about. Right. People don't know about that. So they'll never get it. They'll never. Why has he got his arms extended? He is the scroll. Because before you shoot up into the abyss, you see a scroll. Right. And it goes out, it extends to infinity in both directions. It comes out of a point about 1 foot in front of your point of view. It's crystal clear, and it's written up. It's actually written in these records in the book of Revelation. It even mentions it. So it's part of it, and I can see it in the painting, so I have to explain that. Anyway, so that chapter is all about explaining very famous ways of encoding metaphysics. So you can see it for yourself, and you can see there is a tradition that's gone through history. Then I go into the Gospel of Judas, which I call the Gospel of Twins, because it's extremely revealing, and it's focused on the idea that the cloud is the union of spirit and energy. So Judas represents the physical aspect of the cloud, and Jesus Christ is the spiritual aspect. And of course, they both are associated with its ignorant beginnings as a creator who's crude, right, and the refined Redeemer who is Jesus Christ. And they, of course, have a relationship in the gospel because they are the same cloud. But the gospel is simply a way of explaining that the cloud has come from physical nature, but physical nature is doomed by itself. It's not the true nature. It's not eternal nature. It goes on like this, you know. So it explains the nature of the cloud to you in terms of the Judas-Jesus relationship, which is fascinating. And then I appropriately go into a chapter I call the Apocalypse of the Dead, and because apocalypse means revelation.
Right.
So I could have called it Revelation of the Dead, but I wanted to be overly dramatic, because people think death is apocalyptic and devastating and all this sort of thing. It's just not. Right. You know, it's not. And in the Apocalypse of the Dead, I use the Egyptian Book of the Dead to illustrate ideas that are natural, that they come naturally out of this philosophical understanding of our true position, that we're here to make heaven, and therefore if we don't, we have to come back if we want to. Ultimately, it's down to us, so we choose what we do. But there's the option for us, you know, if we want to take it. And it goes like
we're here to make it for ourselves, but people have got it confused and think that we're supposed to make heaven for everybody here on this planet.
You can't make heaven on earth.
You're here to, in reality, for yourself. But people have gotten that misconstrued, and we're supposed to make heaven on earth. It's like that's not going to take place. So
they can't. No.
Right, they've got their focus on outer things again instead of internal things. Instead of actually working themselves, they want to. You see that? Layla asked a question here, going back to the scroll. She says, "Is the scroll like the living book?"
Yeah, it is. That's a really good description, actually, because I reckoned as I saw it that it recorded all my existence from the moment I started entering the cosmos to live and experience and what have you, till this moment of my ascension now. I thought all of that was encoded and written on the scroll as if it records your entire existence. That's the impression I got from it. But once you've looked at it and seen it, you can't see what's written on the surface. It's impossible. It's moving way too fast. I even tried to follow it to get a snapshot, and all I got was blurry white and blurry gold. I couldn't see anything. And then everything goes black and you never see it again. So you wonder, does it really have any point? It felt like my existence was now being unraveled, and there's no need to do any more. There's no need to add to my trials and tribulations, because I've done what I need to. Therefore, here is the result of everything you've done to this point. That's the impression I got from it. Like it's a recording.
Right.
Yeah.
It's been all written down. Which is actually,
yeah.
Which is also, we've been told that, there are like going back, there's a record, everything you've done. In other words, it's like I said earlier, of the Akashic records. But the point simply is it was showing the whole thing, how detailed it was. In other words, it was just from here to infinite type of deal.
Yeah, it's your existence from zero.
Right.
From the birth of the universe, what have you done up until this point? You've escaped it.
Right.
Yeah, all of that is on that scroll, as far as I know.
Right.
Yeah.
You can continue on.
Yeah, sure. To finish off, at the end of the Apocalypse of the Dead, I'll make a point that I find very important. That people in spiritual communities and what have you think that their financial benefits in life are a sign that they are favored by God. And I have to point out, there's a saying that we've all heard, that the best plans oft come to naught. The best laid plans often never occur. You can plan all you like, but it doesn't mean life is going to give it to you. You see what I mean?
Well,
in other words, all your plans and what have you, even if you work them out to the finest detail, will always probably go wrong anyway.
Well, it's kind of in some ways like the parable of the rich man, as he builds these barns. He's going to be this big farmer, such and such, and then he loses. He dies. He passes away that very night.
Right.
In other words, his focus is in the wrong place.
Yeah, that's right.
If you remember the parable, it's the rich man, and had all these grains. He said, "I'm going to have this type of thing. I'm going to have oodles, and I'm building more and more barns and such." And like the scripture is very clear that what does that do with your lives can be gone tonight, so to speak.
That's right. This is garbage, really. In a way, obviously, we we need to live. We make business. We have human relations, and we deal with finance and what have you. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it. It's just if we think that's all there is, to the point of just not even dealing with the thing we're supposed to be doing, that's the problem. Right. That's the problem. So it's not the problem is that it exists. It's the problem that it distracts us to the point where we don't actually do anything we're supposed to.
Correct.
And it's just a way of saying tell people that read it that, you shouldn't worry about what happens in your life. Even if you plan something great and it doesn't happen, do not be disappointed, because the purpose of your life has nothing to do with that necessarily.
No, it's not about you're here to get some kind of riches or something. That has nothing.
Yeah. Then I go into, actually I've swapped the order. I used to have the Hypostasis of the Archons, which is a Gnostic text. Right. At this point, and that means the reality of the rulers. Hypostasis means reality. Archons is a way of referring to fundamental principles of our reality that I've explained, and I actually show you a graphic that explains the 12 Archons specifically. Here it is. I don't know whether you can see that clearly. There's 12 Archons.
Yes.
So what we have here is here's the seed condition. There's you, that's the light, that's you, and here's the cloud of heaven next to you. This is the T0 seed condition of our universe, like a seed that grows a tree. And the universal pattern starts off with crude energy, then it makes atoms, and of course we just simply follow the energetic complexity as it goes from atoms to molecules to the vegetable kingdom, the animal kingdom, and the kingdom of humanity, which is basically the kingdom of rationale or thought, contemplation, that leads to the ascension moment and the completion of this entire cycle, supposedly. And the archons are just the governing principles of everything that's here. So if you exclude yourself, if you're this awareness here, what you've got is a cloud, which is made of 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and air.
Right.
Supposedly. It's the 5th element, which is a unification of the 4. and you have you're surrounded by your own continuity, which is called the abyss by most people, and that is labeled as ether.
Right.
Ether is spiritual nature, but you have an abyss, which is your continuity, which is more objective, and then there's you, the subjective entity, which is the discrete aspect of this eternity that the abyss represents. So archons are nothing more than governing principles. They're not people or creatures or aliens from the past.
Right.
They're not Anunnaki and all this sort of thing that people.
Yes, where all this has been. Yeah, all this is. I think it's John Lash is one who does that. Wrote books. I don't know if you know who John Lash is.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I have a few things to say. If I could meet John Lash, I'd probably take him around the back of the pub and stick my finger in his face and say, like, well, what are you up to, mate? Are you just trying to make money out of people here or what? Because you're talking absolute bollocks. I'm afraid. Right. I don't know what you're talking about. Why? It makes money. That's the problem with that subject matter.
Well, as soon as makes money. Correct.
Yeah. And the word Anunnaki in today's world makes money.
Yes. That word, that whole thing is suddenly people are put all their attention on that particular phrase, or even, a lot to do even with Egypt, but Anunnaki is like, it's like, and they make up stories. But yeah, John Lash is the one, as I recall, it's probably been 15 years, 20 years ago, whatever. He wrote a book, if not many books, and he's given his whole deal. The same thing, this whole, it's almost as though this was choreographed. It's almost as though this was brought on stage to lead people astray, somewhat. To me,
I don't know whether they're intentionally doing that. I think they're just trying to make a name for themselves with a certain subject. So he thinks he's an expert, and he talks about Sophia like she's a particular person in ancient history. When Sophia means wisdom.
Right.
It's not necessarily a person as such. But
no, it had nothing. Right. Right.
Yeah, the scenario at T0, the seed condition of our universe, supposedly that we gather from Ascension, the whole thing is referred to as Sophia, because it is the wise condition. It's the condition born out of wisdom.
Right.
So you, the abyss, the cloud, this whole thing collectively is referred to as Sophia. But we can go in and be more specific if we want to. You are the one who's gained the wisdom. Therefore, we can refer to you as Sophia. But we need to make that clear when we write about Sophia. Right. So Sophia is not a woman. The reason Sophia is considered to be a woman is because you have come from the universe, and everything other than spirit is considered to be female. Because we literally create new life. New life is created in manifestation. Spirit never changes as such. So what is physical is considered to be female. It's associated with as being a female body, as it were. That can recreate itself. And that's what we find in nature. We find procreation. So when you arrive in the abyss, you're considered to be Sophia. You are the attainment of wisdom, and you've come from the universe. Therefore, you're a female. The cloud in front of you is androgynous. However, we can talk, because it's androgynous, it contains both male and female. It's the creator of both, so it has both in it. Therefore, we can talk about the cloud as Sophia as well, because it is what you get when you become wise. It's a sign, it's a testament of wisdom, the cloud. It's a testament. It's a testament to God as well. But as a testament to wisdom, we can refer to it as Sophia. But we need to make that clear in when we write it. And we can also refer to the cloud as male, and his male name as creator is Ariel. Ariel means lion of God, the lion head of God. That's what it means, the lion of God. And it looks like the head of a lion. You see, these things work together. It depends on how we write about it. So if somebody comes out and says, Sophia is this lady in history who went through this trial and tribulation. She gave birth to this creature. It was a foul creature. It did terrible things. It's associated with the devil. Oh, what a calamity. But all it's saying is that when you make the cloud of heaven, because it's the union of spirit and energy, it has a spiritual aspect and a physical aspect. And its physical aspect is automatically going to make the universe, which is considered to be a blasphemy, because it's a physical creation, not a thing of spirit.
Spirit, right.
That's all. So we have to be careful when we read these texts how serious to
being
think.
taken literally instead of actually figuratively.
Yeah, because then the Cathars in France would go around saying the entire universe is nothing but evil.
Right, right.
And in so doing, they reject it. But the idea of rejecting physical nature is simply a way of saying you prefer the spiritual concept of intellect and intelligence and doing things well and properly because it makes you happy.
Right.
This kind of thing. The Cathars are all about the world is evil. This brick, I live in this cell in this castle made of stone. Stone is evil. It's of the universe. Time.
Right.
There is time. There is no time in spirit, but there is time in the universe. Time must be evil.
Right. So they
You know,
made this whole duality, so to speak, as being a devilish thing or evil thing, and made
Yeah.
it bad. When in reality, that's not what it was meant to be. They just taken Lada's got a couple. Lada says sphere concepts in general seem to be easily monetized in my observation. Yeah, it's become very, very, very ways of making money these days.
Yeah.
And she says the physical characters are a conceptual representation of particular attributes.
Yes.
She's asking a question.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
Yeah, like the Lady of Shalott, the painting of the Lady of Shalott. It's a William Waterhouse painting of a woman on a boat on a lake, surrounded by nature.
Right.
And there are 3 candles sticking up the front of the boat. The boat is black; it's painted black on purpose, and there are 3 candles sticking up, and only one of them has a flame on it. Everything in this painting is symbolically representing the seed moment of Sophia. The ancient Egyptians called it Zep Tepi, time of the first, or the first time, meaning T0. No, timelessness is T0. There is no time, and it's a root. It's a natural root. See, so the Lady of Shalott, the painting, nobody knows that is a representation that is also found at the Vatican and St. Peter's Square. They'd never associate the two together, but they are literally the same thing in 2 different forms.
Explain that. You mean the artwork that's there also at the Vatican showing this?
No, the Lady of Shalott is not at the Vatican. It's a William Waterhouse painting of classic ideas. He painted. And she's in a boat. The boat represents the cloud. If you think of the cloud with its beams as a boat with oars sticking out of it,
right,
sailing in the ether.
Correct, in the air.
So in ancient Egypt, they also refer to the cloud as the bark of millions of years, for obvious reasons, because it lives forever. It's always at T = 0. It's a forever state and condition. It never goes away. So it's a boat. It's a bark.
Right.
There's lots of boat associations with it. Just to say that there's another boat association in an old Babylonian thing. I wanted to mention about Babylonian stuff. It's so far removed from in ancient history that nobody can grasp it anymore, and you can invent anything you want in its terms. And if anyone watching was wondering who on earth Enki and Enlil really are, Enki and Enlil are the same as Cain and Abel. Enki is the creator, and Enlil is the redeemer, Jesus Christ. It's just a Babylonian version of the same story. It's the same as Judas and Jesus. Enki is Judas, Enlil is Jesus. Same principle, exactly the same idea. And the Babylonian epic, the Enuma Elish, is in 7 tablets, of course, which is represents the 7 aspects of creation, the 7 breaths of God. The 7 colors of the rainbow.
Yes.
All these things they're all principles of 7, and 7 comes from 1. It's an aspect of singular nature. 7. There's a lot of mathematics behind that. It's quite simple, actually.
Yes, Layla's got a comment. She says, I don't know this, so this might be English literature. I think The Lady of Shalott is also a poem by Alfred Tennyson.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's right. Yeah, maybe he painted it from the poem. But all those guys were into the classics, and some of them were Masons. I mean, I don't know whether people know that Oscar Wilde, the playwright, the great wit of Oscar Wilde, you know, yeah, he was a Freemason. He's buried in Père Lachaise in Paris. I've been to his grave.
Oh, you've been to his grave? Wow.
Yeah. He has a great big stone with it looks like a sphinx carved into it, a sphinx with its wings extending out behind it like this. A kind of very, very nice, very 1930s Art Deco style as well. Everybody buried in Père Lachaise is a Freemason or was a Freemason.
Is that a cemetery in Paris? Well,
yeah, Jim Morrison is buried there as well.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I've been to his grave. Yeah, there's always people standing at Jim Morrison's grave. No matter when you go, there's always just people standing there, and they're just standing there staring at it. What do you say? This is where Jim Morrison is lying in rest. You know, the great Jim Morrison from the Doors.
Right, from the Doors, right.
So, but they don't know about the music industry, and that the Freemasonry and the music industry run together as well.
Correct.
People don't know about that. You have to have rules with that kind of industry because it's very dangerous. It's very powerful. It has great influence. So you need great responsibility to govern it, as it were. You know.
Anyway. When you say Jim Morrison, was he English? He wasn't English. He was American, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was an American dude. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So why would he be buried in Paris? Basically, you're saying because he was a Freemason. Is that correct?
No, he died in Paris.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but he's buried in Père Lachaise, which is a Freemason's graveyard, specifically, but not just some other graveyard, you know, of rich
not
people.
some any old place. This is a special place, so to speak, right?
Yeah. Père Lachaise it's called. Yeah, it's a very famous graveyard in Paris, full of people. Yeah. It's almost full. Yeah.
Yes.
Every tomb has the triangle with the streaks of light coming out of it, representing the cloud of illumination. You'll see that everywhere in Père Lachaise. It's Freemason's logo, you know, that sort of thing.
Right.
Anyway, yeah.
Mr. Mensa was saying, he just got on here. He said, "Good afternoon to you and Layla." And then Layla's wrote something here a few minutes ago. She said, roll your boat gently down the stream. Life is but a dream."
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
I do recall, when I think about this, to give you an idea, there was a Christian musician back in the 90s, and he did a video called Jim Morrison's Grave, and he actually is there at that. Because it's a really cramped looking place. I mean, it's like everything's put almost together. Just so many people there, grave sites, so to speak. Yeah. There's hardly any room left anymore, so to speak.
That's right.
And he's singing the song saying Jim Morrison's grave, realizing simply in his amount of Christianity, he's dead now. You know, in other words, you know, the whole perspective here is like, so now you're dead. What are you going to do, so to speak? That'd be a Christian perspective. You know, that band, but he was only in one band, correct? Wasn't just the Doors?
Yeah, he was a poet singer. Yeah, he was a poet.
He was never in any other band. He was just that particular band.
That's right. Yeah, only in the Doors. Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah, terrific band.
Break on through the other side. Yeah. It
Yeah.
almost has a spiritual dimension in a lot of ways too, that song.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
A gentleman here named Brad Brittain, Brittain. I guess it's Brittain. Phil, are you aware of the solar bodies? I don't know.
What does he specifically? That's a big subject, because the cloud of heaven is referred to as the solar body by the Greeks. It's called to Soma Heliakon, as if it's the sun, at its pinnacle in its arm.
Yeah, he just said. He's got 3 comments here, maybe more than that. It's okay. He's got. Phil, are you aware of the solar bodies? This is his first question or statement, and it says, and I was doing some thinking today. and the archetypes and allegories are everything but. And I don't know why he stopped there, and he explained the correlation between the baptism and transformation, water and transformation. I don't know what he means by that, unless he's talking something to do with Christianity.
Well, esoterically, every transformation associates with water because you're born from the waters of your mother's womb.
Okay.
You see, and the idea with the abyss is you're reborn as spirit into a bottomless ocean. So the abyss has an association, as it were, with water as a bottomless sort of ocean, but a dry kind of ocean.
I don't know if he's asking a question here or he's just making statements. He does say, explain the correlation between the baptism and transformation. And then he comes out water and transformation. And then Mr. Menza made his comment here, water is the antenna for the soul. And then I got another quick statement here. It says, makes you wonder why the terminology coronal mass ejection is used in relation to the sun. Sounds like the expulsion from the crown of the head. That's from Layla.
Right. So funnily enough, there's a thing about when I saw that statue at Angkor Wat, it had stuff streaming off this light, had a light in its forehead, and there was all this what looked like plasma material like pouring off to the left and the right. It reminded me of coming off the sun, but
that was what you were seeing. Yeah.
What was he mentioned? What was he talking about there? Can you just read Brad's thing again quickly?
Simply is that can you explain the correlation between the baptism and transformation? And then the next little statement it says water and transformation.
When he says transformation, is he talking about a spiritual ascension?
Are you talking about spiritual transformation here?
And when he says baptism, is he referring to the ceremonial baptism you get when you're a Christian or become a Christian, as opposed to the actual baptism with fire when you meet God?
I know that he makes a statement right before that. He says, I was doing some thinking today, and the archetypes and allegories are everywhere. And then he goes into the explaining the correlation between the baptism and transformation.
Christian ceremonies are basically archetypal.
Oh, okay. Here he comes. He just put something up. He said the baptism in the Gnostic sense. The Gnostics, his perspective. Well, Gnostic baptism before you acquire your garment of light.
Right. So that would be spiritual ascension then. The two keys to heaven, that is, but they're written up in the Bible anyway.
Right.
I think the only reason they didn't include Gnostic texts is because they didn't want it to become too personal. They wanted you to recognize the authority above you in society and in spiritual nature. There's lots and lots of things to say about that. You know, that they didn't include Gnostic texts in the biblical canon. Why not? Maybe because it explains too well.
Goes into too much detail.
Yeah, maybe it does, and they don't want that because it detracts from the idea that they're using Jesus as a personified hero for something to give people so they can aspire to something at least, and it may have
basically thrown a bone out to some hungry dogs, and that'll be enough for you. So
it may be I don't know what their intention was, but it may be an attempt to give people a hero so that they have something to go for, because we do aspire to our heroes, and it may be perfectly innocent like that, but I can't explain what people have done. All I can do is interpret what it says, from what I know personally. And we can only guess on what people were thinking in the past and why they didn't include Gnostic texts in the canon. I don't know. I think it's because it's too detailed, and it requires too many questions, too many answers.
Would it also? It's a speculation question. Is it also to do simply is that maybe they didn't want to reveal any more so-called, in that perspective, pagan thinking?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. Yeah, they did try and crush paganism.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I know, but pagans still they had their hero ideas as well. I don't know. Maybe it's just easier to run a society if everybody kind of agrees on the same religious context. Maybe it's a
Okay.
way of preventing civil war. If everybody agrees, they're not going to go to war with each other, are they, about their personal views? And
Right.
religion
Right.
causes both wars.
Right. Religion causes wars. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. We
So
want everybody to get along here. So let's just
yeah,
work together,
right.
cooperate, so to speak. Let's
Yeah,
kind of
fine.
agree with what we're saying here.
Yeah.
Let's see. Mr. Menzies said, "You tell me if you got to go here, because I know it's
I've got to
past."
go. Yeah, I've got to
Yeah,
go.
because it's 2 hours and 15 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Menzies said, "My guess is they wanted to hide the truth." And then he says, "Repent, say you believe in Jesus, and you get to heaven." Equals Christianity in a nutshell. Okay. Okay. That's just kind of that is kind of in a nutshell. Yeah, that's what they teach. So,
That's
but
kind of wishful thinking.
yeah.
Amounts to.
I appreciate everyone being here. You guys got to come a little earlier because we met at 9, and so actually 11:20 now, and
Yeah.
so I don't normally keep Phil here. Thank you, Layla, for being here.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your
Yeah.
questions. Thank you for everyone that's been here. Let me ask you a quick question before you go, Phil. Are you going to be available this Friday?
What was happening on Friday?
It's Thanksgiving over here. I don't know what you guys
Right.
do Thursday. I don't know.
I have to say no because I'm not sure. I think I'm talking to Steve. So far, Steve has organised a Zoom chat for Friday for me.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm
You know
gonna.
what time?
I don't know. We haven't agreed on a time yet.
Okay.
So that's what I've got planned at the moment so far, but we
Okay.
haven't actually settled on
That's
something
fine
yet.
because he said something to me. I guess it was last week. He said, "Oh, okay, you're doing some things such and such with Phil." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I haven't done anything with him in a long time." I was like, "Okay." So I figured he probably would be thinking in mind himself, "Well, I need to grab a hold of Phil and talk a little bit." So, so that's what I kind of figured that might be coming up.
Right.
So I don't.
Right.
So it won't. You will not be. We won't be doing an interview on Friday. Me and Phil will not be. Okay. So
No, next
okay,
Monday is fine if you want to do Monday
okay, we'll
next
go
week.
with next Monday. So so if anybody knows who Steve is, which is Slanted Sluted or the Truth, I think his site's
Sleuth.
called Sleut, Sleuth, I think.
Yeah.
Um, he'll be on Friday sometime. I don't know when. I don't know.
Yeah.
Usually, I guess. I don't. It'll probably be in the evening, is what I guess here. I don't know.
Normally it's evening for me and afternoon for him, so it's right in the middle of his day.
Right, right.
Um,
So I assume he's doing it on his vacation day because Friday would be also, yeah, slightly slanted sleuth for the True channel. Right.
that's it. That's it.
Um,
Yeah.
and I would assume that he will he doesn't do a StreamYard. He does what's the name of the company that does it? Zoom.
Yes.
So, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Phil, I appreciate you being here. Thank you for answering a good many questions. Time flies by so quickly.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
So we'll schedule not this Friday, but next Monday at the same time around 9 o'clock my time and 2 o'clock your time.
Okay. We'll
Brad says, Phil, take a look at the Gospel of Philip if you can, and could you give a overview analysis when you can? Well, that might be a good question. It might be a good question to ask Stephen. So anyway, I got to let Phil go. He's got things to do. So appreciate you all being here. Thank you for your time, Phil. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, guys, for being here as well. Thank you.
Yeah, everybody came at the last part here.
Oh, oh well.
Okay. Take care, Phil. Okay. Bye-bye.
There's plenty of opportunities. Okay.
That's right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.